So we're actually going to turn our attention to our first live, or I guess we had Devin earlier, but an in-person opportunity here. Derrick, it's great to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
And,
you know Josh Jacobs, right?
Yeah.
Sandy McMillan, Andrew
Yeah.
Wang.
I think I met Andrew in person.
Okay.
Before.
Andrew does those vicious thumbnails on my YouTube.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Let's get the headphones
They're
off.
funny, man. They're
That's
funny.
good.
Oh man,
Makes me laugh.
That's
Anyway,
good.
how you doing, brother?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. So, so the future film Academy Award-winning director is he's back home for the holidays.
Back home for the holidays. Yeah, for a few weeks. Already regretting the weather.
It's cool.
USC Film School, but I'm not going to ask, of course, but I can only imagine what that costs.
It's something. It's very difficult to get into, and once you do, you find ways, and they find ways, and you kind of earn it. So it's good.
Listen, your time is valuable, and even when you're off, you're never really off. So as someone who kind of knows the life of a beat writer, especially one as dedicated and driven, and frankly, as nuts as you are.
I'm aging out of that.
No, you are. No, I know that I just want to thank you for coming, not just agreeing to participate, but you even said, "Well, I'll come out." How's that?
Yeah. Well, I could do some Christmas shopping.
Well, there you go. You got some cards.
I brought you. I brought you. Card.
There it is.
There you go.
It's a rookie card, huh?
Yeah. Well, I won't ever get another one.
Yeah. Is this mine?
Yeah.
that's awesome.
I got to find a way to put it.
I don't know if you had one.
No, I don't think I did. And when I do my next YouTube, which will be tomorrow, definitely going to put that on camera.
There you go. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you. The great Derrick Goold.
Well, Derrick, it's been a crazy offseason for you, I'm sure, so far. Recapping, even going back to the end of season press conference and the plan to be announced and how things have transpired so far. Is there anything that surprised you so far? Anything that shocked you about how things have played out to this point?
I mean, I think that, they didn't exactly get the I'll go somewhere response from some of the veterans. I think there's been some kind of tectonic shift a little bit from their plans when they hear from, Wilson Contreras, well, I'd prefer not to move teams, but I'll move positions. Or when they hear from Sonny Gray, I'd prefer not to, move teams. I'd like to see this through with you all. I'd like to see where this goes. I think, when those guys say that, now they didn't that wasn't completely unexpected, right? The Cardinals were braced for that. John Mozeliak even said that he had kind of a speech worked up, for the guys that he wanted to present to them. I asked him if he'd present it to us. He said at some point in time, I'm still working through it, but he delivered it, as far as the direction the team is going, what it looks like for a few years, how quick they're going to turn around. But you sense a tone shift, from the press conference to the GM meetings when, I was asking Mo, I was talking to him about why now? What's brought this on? And, he kind of shifted it a little bit and said, I'm not going to blow the whole thing up. He goes, we might be better than people think. And that echoed kind of what was the vibe around the Cardinals a little bit at those meetings, at the GM meetings, was that, the Cardinals weren't going into this complete, rebuild. They weren't shedding their entire roster. They're helped by the division they're in. They look a lot different in another division, but they weren't completely, bailing on contending. I thought that was interesting. And I did ask Mo how he felt, if, he had that long run without a losing season, how would he feel if his second losing season was his last losing season, and what kind of echo that would bring? And he said that's not the goal here. The goal isn't to completely run away from contention. It's to build a better team to contend for championships for a longer time, but not completely retreat from a season. So I think there's been a bit of a tone shift.
I want to ask you this, and it's their messaging is not your responsibility, and so you'd like to say, well, if I were doing it, this would be my message. You don't think in those terms.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting because, me, I get a lot of public feedback in all my various platforms, and I sense that a lot of Cardinals fans, and not all, but a lot of Cardinals fans, I was actually surprised that when the Cardinals came out at the end of the season news conference and they laid out what's going to be happening, this is what we're going to do, and they were pretty transparent.
Yeah.
I think a lot of fans understood it and were willing to give it a chance. And, you know, it's been pretty great around here for a long time. And now the Cardinals took a downturn and it could have been avoided, which makes people mad. And I get that because I feel the same way. But
yeah,
I thought, like, all of a sudden, you know, their messaging isn't like, well, we feel we really need to do this for the future. And, you know, here's why. And these are the players we need to find out more and more about to know if they're going to be a big part of our future. People are like, well, that makes sense, actually. And to redo the whole minor leagues. But now when Mo goes on Camo X or he talks to you guys or whatever it is, and there's more of that you alluded to that's like creeping in, like, well, we think we can exceed expectations. We think we can do better when people think. We think that we can be like a really competitive team. We think, and he's hinting at being a contender. And my point is, like, you had a lot of the fan base educated as to what your plan was, and I really think reasonable fans got it.
Yeah.
But now you're trying to, like, in effect, inflate hopes that 2025 could be a lot better than expected. Aren't they setting themselves up to, like, basically leave the fans disillusioned again because they're changing the script?
That's the risk, right?
Right.
I think. You know,
sorry for the long question, by the way.
You make a good point. I think they're trying to tie that the team should be as good as the young players who make it.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to create. You know, that's like what between the lines. And Mosela, I mean, obviously, I talked to Bill DeWitt Jr. and said, we're going young. That's the plan. Now, some of that's shifted because they're going to have Wilson at first base. They're still going young at catcher. But they have Sonny Gray to lead the rotation. You know, Eric Fetty's in there. I mean, so it's not entirely young. Miles Miklasz is part of the rotation.
Yeah.
But they're going to go young in measure. And so they're trying to pull off two things. One, reduce expectations from fans, reduce expectations within the clubhouse. And that is something that Mosaic has talked about. And this is a conversation that's been going on for years. I know that Oliver Marmol and I had a long talk, and he references it every so often in Miami during the regular season a few years ago. And I was asking him about, you know, didn't really kind of have a phrase for it, eventually settled on the notion of an opportunity gap. But basically, it's this notion of impatience. Like, they have moved on from young players at a really remarkable clip if they don't produce.
Yeah.
And that is
right away. Yeah.
Right away. And that's or in the moment of need, right? And that impatience is brought upon by this urgency to win, which has been created either by softening performance or lessening performance from core players or poor starts to the season. There's no other way to say it. They've gotten off to some poor starts in the season, which then intensifies the pressure on which they need to contend. And that has fallen on a lot of the young players. And the young players then don't have the opportunity to fail and then come back and be in the same line. We've seen this. We've heard from the young players. We've seen it in action as some of them have ridden the shuttle back and forth. They've not worked through things. You know, I often contrast or juxtapose them with the Brewers, who have had the benefit of patience. And you just think about the culture of the two teams, right? The Brewers are now the little engine that could, no matter how often they're the king of the division. They're still seen as that, right? And if they falter and have a year where it's down, it's like, oh, that's okay. You know, you'll get them next year, slugger, right? But the Cardinals, it's not the culture here.
You know, because the Cubs and the Cardinals have been outspending the Brewers by such a vast amount.
Exactly.
And so it's like, pardon the cliche, it's like the Brewers, in a way, they're playing with house money.
They are, and they're literally playing with house money. Their fans are like, all right, this everything's come together. I mean, even like they've been patient and they've been paid off for their patience, and they've been fortunate. You know, this year Jackson Chura off to a terrible, like he was not off to a good start. Huge contract, big extension, major part of their future, major part of what they wanted to be their present. They had injuries going on. They needed offense. I mean, there was a lot going on there, right? And he was struggling. They got offense from other places like Reese Hoskins, right? And stuff like that. And so, you know, they kind of stayed with him. but they also didn't have anybody to replace him. Injuries had kind of carved up their depth a little bit. So Jackson Chourio got to play. You could draw a very, very easy connect the dots between that and Jordan Walker. Jordan Walker struggled and he didn't get the chance. He was back in AAA, right? You know, the Cardinals guys have struggled and they're back in AAA. The Brewers didn't have somebody to replace him, so they just let him play.
Yeah, they didn't panic at all.
And they didn't panic.
No.
And then look what happened. Like, he has the second half of the ages and leapfrogs Mason Wynn into the Rookie of the Year ballot, right? So they were patient. You can go back to Ozuna, right? I talked to Stearns about this and just the whole front office there at the Brewers about like how that winter played out for them, because the Cardinals did not want the music to stop without a Marlins outfielder. They felt that they needed to make a play on the Marlins schedule so that they weren't left without one. Meanwhile, the Brewers were like, we're cool if we're left without one because we want to get the one that we want. And if they don't trade him, and this is a year where we don't contend as a result, that's okay. But we're not going to make a play for the other guys because we want the one that we want. Now, the Cardinals felt like they couldn't do that. Their pressure was on from ownership, from fans, from media to get a cleanup hitter. And so they had to go through that. They were hoping to get Yelich. That was the guy. I think we've all talked about that. That was the guy that they thought had the biggest upside, left-handed bat, best fit, all of it. He was on the rise. Ozuna was coming off a remarkable year, just a tremendous year. But as far as like the long-term fit, they were like, that Yelich is the guy for us, our ballpark, our feel, that lineup, everything. But the Marlins were like, we're not dealing with it. And the Cardinals couldn't wait, just like they haven't been able to wait for these prospects. And that was something that Ollie brought up, that the expectations are such that it creates a suffocating or this urgency or even like fickleness that you speed through, produce today, play tomorrow, produce today, play tomorrow.
It makes
sense.
sense.
If you don't, then you move on. Rosarena, great example.
Adolis Garcia.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Adolis Garcia, great example. Of
Matthew Liberatore.
Matthew Liberatore is changing the script a little bit, right? But yeah, Michael McGreevy would have been, except for he came up and
It produced.
pitched like a gem, right?
No,
and so they're trying to change. To your original question, I'm sorry for the long answer.
No, it's good, man.
To your original question about like what are they doing messaging wise? They are trying to reduce the expectations, and if we don't see that, that's fine by them. They want the clubhouse to feel that.
Okay.
No, and I think that actually makes a lot of sense, because how many moves have the Cardinals made? Not that we can sit here and catalog them all, but how many moves have they made to where it's done because they feel like they have to know? Well, we have to prove something to the fans. We have to do this. We have to do that. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. They're feeling the heat and they're reacting to it rather than being proactive in advance and having their whole system and everything else set up better. To where there's talent coming. When that talent stopped coming, that's kind of listen. There are several pivotal moments that led to the Cardinals to this place. One cannot be helped. When you have generational players like Pujols and Molina and Wainwright and others we could mention, when all of a sudden it's like they're not here. They're gone. That era is over. The books are closed. It's like
the Yankees haven't been really good since the core four.
No, that's right.
Okay,
So,
but they haven't been champions.
So that can't be avoided because players get old and they retire.
Right.
Or like in Waino's case, unfortunately, the final year was tough.
Yeah, he got the 200 wins.
So
thank goodness
that was a remarkable day.
So in one way or the other, the Cardinals were going to take a hit. They were going to take a step back because all this generational talent they had. From even starting with Mark McGwire in '98. Yeah. And I know they didn't win with him, but that's really not the point in terms of like growing it to a 3 million annual home attendance and excitement, and people couldn't get enough of it. A lot of people try to revise history now on that, but it was an incredible sensation. And then one star after another checking into Busch Stadium, just all those trades that Jocketty made. And they had all these guys were either team Hall of Famers or Cooperstown Hall of Famers. And when all of that runs out, I mean, good luck to anybody trying to, in effect, sustain that or recover from that.
Mhm.
It's not plausible. It's not reasonable.
Yeah.
But where they slipped, that was the number one thing. And I'm sorry, I'll be quiet after this. Number two thing is that the thing that Bill DeWitt takes the most pride in, and the thing that when people were laughing at him, we hired this guy, Jeff Luna. Who is this guy? He's from a business school. What? And
Pets.com, right?
the thing that he did, because Bill DeWitt's always loved player development. It's in his blood. He used to go with his father on scouting trips and everything else. He set up a scouting, like a computer program for the Cincinnati Reds before anyone was doing it. Bill DeWitt that put a database together.
Yeah.
This is like way back when. That's his thing. And yet that model that he built with Luna, that just self-sustaining model, because the talent's always coming in. Then you top it off with stars. He let that get away. And that's when they crashed. Because it's one thing when your era runs out because it's time, you know, but then that lifeblood that you could have kept pumping in, they let that dissipate. And that's the thing that really hurt them the most.
Yeah.
Because you had to have that if you were going to survive the end of an era with all these superstars.
I mean, there are like seminal moments, right? Or like, you know, what do they call it in the multiverse? The moment that cannot change, right? You know, canon moments, right?
Right.
You know, Jason Hayward going to the Cubs,
Right.
right? And all that followed is a canon moment. Obviously, the tragic passing of Oscar Correct is a key moment, but not to be overlooked is exactly what undermined what you're talking about, and that's the 2017 draft where they were sanctioned by Major League Baseball for the hacking scandal. Those players that would have been drafted in that spot, maybe, but this would be about the time that they would be helping. This is about the time where they would be, if not like significant contributors, depending on where the Cardinals picked and who they picked, but at least depth. And you think about like what the Cardinals tried to do, and I think you hit on something really important, is as they tried to cycle through the generational players, knowing that they weren't going to pick high enough to get them. So they had to, as Jocketty did, trade for them. The Rollins, the Edmonds, now the few, many years later, it's the Matt Holliday. Then it's the Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. But when they had the Goldschmidt Arenado together, they were really thin pitching wise. They were really thin depth wise. The farm system didn't provide the constants
Right.
that they needed. And they had to go chase that. They had to go chase elsewhere. That draft that year would have helped. Delvin Perez, that he obviously would have helped. Going out and not nudging that one step toward all in that the Cardinals just kept themselves from. They like to curl their toes around the diving board and never do a belly flop. They never loved it. They just never wanted to do the Philadelphia Phillies or now I guess the Steve Cohen. And I get it, but they also then missed the chance because they weren't providing from their farm system enough to outfit the core players who could have been.
Right.
Which is really what we're going to call this, right?
Right.
This is the core that could have been.
And they had the bad break with Alex Reyes too.
Or Jack
It's
Flaherty.
terrible.
Jack Flaherty to an extent
Yeah.
went off course.
Pitching
Pitching injuries
early,
Yeah, pitching injuries happen. It's like the Cardinals are the
And the bats went completely silent against a really hot Washington Nationals team that was maybe, to be honest, maybe the Cardinals should have been, well, those Nationals, it worked out for them. They got hot at the right time. Maybe that's the team we are. And then the other one is the pandemic. I mean, they scaled, the farm system had a great reputation, was very robust, had a lot of things going for it, was searching for the talent. They had the donut hole that, we talked about at the time where it just was like, there was this gap in the prospects. There just was. It just was, they had prospects that were on the brink and then a gap and prospects who were in the distant future. That donut hole arrived. All these things happened right around that pandemic. They downsized the staff. They didn't really replace it. They didn't have, the kind of coordinators that they're used to. They had the performance department, but it was separated from the player development. It was run, in the same complex, but there wasn't the interaction. And then that completely changed when the first director of the performance department left, and it slipped to other people to do those responsibilities. They had a lot of people they became a newspaper, Bernie. I mean, that's what happened. They became a newspaper.
Well, see, you're personalizing, so we got a frame of reference. We understand. Yeah.
They became a newspaper. They asked every individual to do more as the individual numbers reduced due to layoffs or not hires or all that stuff.
No, it's good. It's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just for newspapers. Right? No, I mean, I love them, but it's just like a shame what's happened. Although STL today is a great example of how you can transition and still remain very vital in your market. Yeah.
Doing well.
So what? There's so many things I want to ask. Okay, well, we would get to like a more pressing question that I know our viewers are want us to ask some of these things. So you did a really great job of sussing out the Arenado stuff like yesterday and adding some new information. It was job well done as always. But there's no way to like predict a finite outcome. But what's your read of the situation? Are they still? Do you think they're still confident that they can make a deal that appeals to him? Okay,
they are still confident that they can make it. That's okay. You added a qualifier there.
Yeah. Well, they can make a deal, but it's one that he'd have.
Well, they already made a deal, and obviously it didn't appeal to him.
Well, I mean, they got close. I don't know if they had the deal.
Okay.
Like there's like two elements to this, right?
They were in the red zone somewhere.
That's a good way.
1 yard line.
Yeah. They were like
maybe inside the 10.
Yeah, they might have even scored, and Nolan Arenado goes, "I want you to go for 2," and they're like,
"It's a good one."
But no,
it's a good one.
It's close.
But any timetable? I mean, because
I asked Mo that exact question yesterday, because that's the one that interests me. Because at what point in time, the gifts have to go under the tree, or the new year comes, or the move to Jupiter has to happen, or whatever. And he goes, I'm just in. I'm in for whatever you got. I want to be here, and you're stuck. I want to stay, and I want clarity, and we're going to go. His agent has been very clear in the fact that he does not want to move sideways. Well, that can be taken a lot of different ways, right? Like, I don't want to move sideways. I don't want to go to Kansas City, sideways in the state. But I think he just means sideways in circumstance.
Yeah.
And how he looks at that is not his standings, but also like comfort. And there's also like, I find it interesting, like people should listen to like what Arenado says about like why he came here and what they didn't accomplish while he was here. And if he leaves, then that isn't going to change.
Right.
That didn't happen. Like the history, the red coat, all that stuff that he talked about, the packed houses of why he sought out a trade here. If he leaves with those things not happening and that not being on his, resume, not being on his baseball card, not being part of his future. I had a friend of his once tell me, and this is years ago, but I think even before he became a Cardinal, was that Nolan's future is Jose Akendo's job, like working with infielders and like that lineage, like that's like he just likes baseball that much, and he saw like that's what the Cardinals do, right? They keep their guys around, and now he may find another team like that. There are other teams like that, right? Like you go to the Dodgers, you're a Dodger for life. There's a wall there that says that, right? Once a Dodger, always a Dodger, and the name of every Dodger goes up there. Even David Freese's name is up there. Albert Pujols' name is up there. And so you may find that elsewhere, but I think that's a really interesting part of this.
In your opinion, and it's just that, do you think that he said no to the Astros, the idea that because he had some trepidation, they traded Kyle Tucker, they're not bringing Bregman back, which obviously that's why they would want Arenado, because Bregman wasn't coming back.
Right.
And they're still a pretty robust club, but there have been some losses. And did he fear another downturn, kind of like what he went through in St. Louis? Or
that's a fair comment.
Right? Is that one of the things? Or does he just think like, if I ride this out, something better will emerge?
So I think the way I've talked to folks about this, the way I come to understand it is that it's more the latter, that the market gains clarity when Bregman signs.
Yeah.
There are teams that we all know are interested in Bregman, whether they've been reported or whatever. They all are fit for him. Not all of them, but some of them are a good fit for Arenado too, and would definitely satisfy what he's thinking about. It's like moving up in the standings, getting closer to a genuine chance to take a race for a championship and to be part of what puts a team over. You think about like the Yankees, the Red Sox, the fit at Fenway Park defensively, reunited with Trevor Story. I mean, there's a lot that like you can connect the dots with there. And they've invested a lot. They look like they're going to be, there's no guarantee, right? There's a real strong, difficult division. But the Red Sox are well positioned. If the Padres can figure something out, right? Say they free up some money, or say that the Cardinals are just in a bind and they have to eat some of that money, and a Padres deal becomes possible. Gosh, that's a ballpark, that's a vibe, that's an everything, right? So as the market shifts, and I'm not saying the Padres are in the Bregman deal, but
Right.
but as the market shifts, Bregman signs with one team, that's going to leave multiple teams now suddenly still in need of a third baseman with no Bregman. Also, I want to. This is the other thing that came up is there are parts of this deal that are not just the usual. Hey, do you want to go? It's hey, do you want to go with these conditions? This money deferred, this money paid up front, this part of your no trade clause, this move, that. It's the same thing with the Cardinals. And so at any point in time, if those aren't palatable or those like necessities aren't met, then the deal falls apart. The Cardinals ran into that, and you talked about it earlier. Like DeWitt got involved, right?
Right.
And they had to get creative. And like you think about like what Nolan Arenado's deal was, just someday for fun. If you really like want to get into like math, just look at what his deal was.
It would break my brain. I couldn't do it.
I had multiple people walk me through how this happened. Because it's just it was fascinating to me, but it's really in the weeds. Look at his deal with the Rockies, and then look at what his deal looked like after the trade to the Cardinals. It had an additional opt-out. It had an additional year. It had deferred money with interest. It had deferred money without interest. The deferred money with interest is the Rockies' money. The deferred money without interest is the Cardinals because he wanted to be a Cardinal. I mean, there's just all these layers to it. And then there's the cash. We haven't even gotten to the $51 million that the Rockies were going to pay. A lot of that was for one season. Like that was kind of lost at the beginning because people were all like, oh, the Cardinals have a rebate for years. No, they had a rebate that year, the first year, because he was acquired in February, right? It went final.
Right.
And they were already down the road with that year. So they were like, well, we'll reposition the ships after this year. But we're going to take all that money. You're going to cover, you're going to pay for him to play for us this year. And so they didn't get the salary relief like that everyone expected the next few years. No, they were on the hook for most of it. It's just a fascinating thing. And so now that deal almost, like you said, it foundered a little bit. And, it was reported, oh, it's a done deal. I think whatever, Thursday, Friday. And then, Saturday night, I was like, well, I might fall apart. There's echoes of that here.
Clear up something for us, too. Like you had some new information in your piece that you wrote last night. And it's one of those things where I just got to state this up front. It's not my goal to say that somebody else was wrong. That's not my goal at all, because there's always information on the information highway at a winter meeting. Stuff's just flying all over the place, right?
Yeah.
But you put something in there today, and I went like, oh, because we were all confused, most of us, by this list that supposedly was out there, 16.
Yeah.
You calmly typed in today or last night, it's like, well, there is no list.
It wasn't. I mean, there was preferences.
Like what?
Yeah.
What? I mean, what happened to the idea of a list? And then now that it really wasn't a list, and it's like, well, what?
Yeah,
does that open it up to like any team that wants to at least talk to the Cardinals?
Correct. So that's a really good.
And again, I'm not slamming anyone else's reporting.
Yeah, I try to avoid that.
Yeah, because these things get kind of crazy,
A lot of folks are eager to attack my reporting.
Right. That's the business, right?
It's become the business.
Yeah. I have to start finding something like that. Just start doing YouTubes like Rip and Derrick.
That'd be great. Let's do it. We have beef. Right? That's right.
We'll have a beef.
Yeah, we'll do old school. You could never mind.
So what happened to the list, Derrick? Tell us.
All right. So Joel Wolf at the winter meetings, when I asked him I can play the tape for you, but I don't.
No, you don't have to. We take
I asked him.
We'll believe
I said, "What? How big's the list this time around? Like, what list of teams?" And he goes, "There is no list." All right. Well, all right. Okay. He interrupted me, and I'm like, "That's fair. I used the wrong phrase." And I said, "How open is he to exploring a broader number of teams than last time?" Because it really came down to 2 teams, and then it was all about one, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Then you had this notion of so I was asking is he more, and Joel Wolf said he's more open-minded this time. And the Cardinals, when they talked to him, they're like, we're going to see what's out there. We're going to see what, go to a few teams, very select few teams that fit your profile. And then we're going to circle back to you and say, this is what we found. Which of these teams satisfy? There were obvious teams that he was like, look, this is the kind of team I'm looking for. This is the kind of spot I want to go to, right? Because you use teams to describe circumstance. That's how we all talk, right? I want, a situation like, a winning team, great ballpark, good history, warm climate, all this stuff, right? You use team. So there was a sense of what teams would fit that. But the Cardinals also were well, let's go look at some other teams that might fit that weren't mentioned. Mm-hmm. They reached out to the Yankees. They reached out to a few teams, and there were about 5 teams. There are more teams than 5 that have contacted the Cardinals. The Angels are one of those teams that have contacted the Cardinals. And there are a few others who have contacted the Cardinals and said, could we get, and they're like, well, you don't really fit, but we'll go to them, or how do you fit? And should we talk to you? So that's kind of how it's gone. And I know it's more nebulous. And Mo has been very open and he's been chatting constantly, it sounds like, with Wolf. He's brought Wolf into some other talks with teams. Joel Wolf said he has not gone out shopping for the deal. He's been coming in talking at the invitation of the Cardinals, which he likes doing. But so that's where things, I can't speak to where or how or what, but you can see how people want they want to simplify it, right? And teams don't simplify. They do a lot of things at once.
Well, let's turn this into a game show. So
okay. Can't wait. Can I answer in the form of a question?
Let's turn this into a game show. All right. If you had to predict, all right, the premise is, all right, there will be a team that comes out of the blue that we never saw really coming. Who would that team be? Is it a
team out of the blue?
One that's not really been in circulation much, if at all. Probably not at all. See, this is what I call game show talk right here. So
it's probably not going to happen.
No, probably not going to happen. But it's all of a sudden, it's what? Where did they come in? You know what? What?
The Mariners are always that team, right?
Yeah.
They're always.
How about Sacramento coming in now?
Arizona?
So they probably have. I don't know, but if you make a list of the teams that are out there shopping for a third baseman, they're on it. The new Sacramento club.
Just the Athletics. They dropped the location totally.
Yeah, on the schedule,
terrible.
When they put the schedule out, it says
Athletics.
Athletic, AATH as opposed to SAC or OA.
That's messed up.
Cardinals don't go there this year. They do play the Rays at Yankee Stadium. So
they're
not Yankee Stadium.
Steinbrenner. That'll be fun.
Man, that's strange.
That's going to be weird.
I know.
But
you've covered ball in some weird places, so that'll be.
I have covered baseball in some great places.
I know you have.
Yeah.
Why do you focus on the weird here?
What weird places are covered?
Maybe weird's the wrong word. I think just unique places.
Yeah.
Did you make
unique places?
Right.
Like Alexandria, Louisiana, in the bullpen with Ron Guidry. I've covered baseball. That was something.
Way back, gosh, were you on the beat, or was it still the commish, or was it Strauss? Where did the Cardinals play? Did they play in Hawaii?
So that was Hummel. Hummel was on the beat, and they played in Hawaii. And then they visited Seattle, I think, for the first time, right?
Yeah.
It was, or no, I know what it was. There was something along those lines. Yeah, and the story there is the beat writers or the team, I can't remember, got off the plane and they were greeted with the flowers, right? And the person handing the flower necklaces to them was Theo Epstein because they were playing the Padres.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, since we're all telling stories, and I hope this doesn't bore everybody.
I wrote him an email. I was like, "Is this true?" He's like, "Oh, it's so true."
So, you just never know about like a Theo Epstein, for example. Well,
be nice to everybody.
When I was traveling around with the commission everywhere, like back in those days, I mean, the Post-Dispatch was sending me on the road a lot as a columnist, and I look forward to certain trips. So like one of them was San Diego, just because it's San Diego. But anyway, let me cut to the chase. So every time we go to San Diego for a couple of years, we go to the one place where commish like to hang out. We could eat late, we'd drink a few beers, whatever. And I noticed, the bartender, who was a great guy, Brad Johnson was his name.
Oh, right, I know this.
So he, he would just a great sports fan, very knowledgeable about music, guy you could have great conversations with. There would always be this young guy there. And, he would just join the conversation, not in a way where he was overbearing, but he would chime in and we would laugh and, and everybody said, this guy's really a good guy. And he would talk about music and they would get into comparing bands. And I'm like, this guy's pretty cool. As it turned out, it was Theo Epstein.
Yeah.
Because he was like a real young guy working for the Padres. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting next to him and we're talking and he was saying, how he says, well, have you ever followed a band around? I said, well, I've seen Springsteen more times than I can count, but there have been others. And he said, I'm kind of a Pearl Jam guy. I love to go see the
kind of.
Yeah, well, no, he was underplaying it at the time. So I didn't know that it was like, and Brad says, oh yeah, it's my friend Theo he works for the Padres. He's just starting out. And it's one of those deals that's like, oh, that Theo.
Yeah.
Years later, right? It's pretty funny how that stuff goes around, right?
Yeah.
He was handing out the lays.
Yeah. And then when they landed in, I think my first conversation with him was about Pearl Jam.
Probably.
I'm pretty sure.
Probably.
That's awesome.
He's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Brilliant guy, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's done good for baseball. And now he's going to try to do good for himself with ownership.
Yeah.
Who was in all your travels?
Mm-hmm.
Who is? It isn't so much a celebrity, but it would have to be a known person. Who's the most, just in the course of your travels in the job and all the places you've been, like who's the most unique public figure you've ever had a chance encounter with?
I have two remarkable ones.
Okay. I asked a good question.
I have many remarkable
That's a good
question.
It's okay to get away from baseball just a little bit, right?
For sure.
I'm in London and talking to John Goodman, who I met.
That's another place where you cover unique baseball.
That was emotional. Not John Goodman, the London.
Yeah.
Seeing baseball in London was emotional. So two. One is at Old Shea, rainy night, and Bill Clinton walks up to me, and I was wearing a slicker that had, because I used to work for Camel Wax on the side, as we all do.
Right.
And I had a Camel Wax rain slicker because it was raining. And that's the only slicker.
Ben Boyd probably got that for you. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Ron Jacober got it for me. It was Ron Jacober. But I was wearing that, and President Bill Clinton comes up to me and says, Camel Wax, you work for Camel? I love Camel Wax. I listen to Camel Wax. And he used to listen to Cardinals all the time growing up in Arkansas. Yeah. And so I had to disappoint him that, no, I don't work for Camel. Well, I do, but I cover the team for the Post-Dispatch. Now I'm on deadline if you don't mind. No, it was great because it was a rain delay. And so he engaged me in this conversation. And then one of the higher ups at West Point came over to introduce himself to the former president and said, your wife is our senator. And President Clinton goes, that is wonderful. Can I introduce you to Derrick? We're talking baseball. And it was one of the more remarkable things. The other one is back to is Theo related. The one game playoff, Cubs Pirates. Remember that? At PNC Park. And the winner advanced to play the Cardinals. The Post-Dispatch, we all talked. We thought it's a significant thing if it's the Cubs Cardinals in the playoffs for the first time. So this is 2015. So we went to cover that one game playoff. We actually sent two of us. Benjamin Hockman and I went. And there, Jed Hoyer, who was with the Cubs, and Theo introduced me to Eddie Vedder. And Eddie Vedder was on the field. They introduced me to him. We talked for a little bit. And I said, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I would like to get your thoughts on what happens if the Cubs play the Cardinals. And he gave me a great quote, and he knew it, and he finished it and walked away. He knew he stuck the landing.
It's a performer, man.
And, oh my gosh, did he ever?
That's a great story.
But it gets
I never heard that.
Oh no, it gets better. It gets better. They win, and we're in the clubhouse during the champagne celebration. There is a photo of me and Jake Arrieta that ran in the Tribune in my family in Chicago. I got a kick out of it because Jake Arrieta has a cigar and my eyes are bulging. But what's not in the picture is the plastic sheeting coming down towards his head with a lit cigar.
Oh my
so
goodness.
That's what has my attention. It's like, oh, we're gonna go up in flames. And I've talked to Jake about this because he has the photo framed and everything. I'm like, you're welcome, I guess. But in that thing, there's a tug at my arm. And I don't know if I've told this story before. So here we go. It's publicly. But there's a tug at my arm. And I hear this, hey, St. Louis guy. And I look and it's Eddie Vedder. And he goes, is this what it's always like? These celebrations? And I'm like, yeah, this is what it looks like. He goes, they need to do this more often. That was pretty good.
Story. That's a real good story. It is.
So I talked with him for a while. That we talked about skateboarding, PNC Park.
And I should point out, like, and again, I know we're not talking
I don't
hardcore
like to
baseball.
name drops, but
no,
you
that's
asked.
yeah, I know. And I know we're not talking hardcore baseball right now. So if me interrogating Derrick about different things is, I'm sorry if it disappoints you, but the one thing I want to say about Derrick, there's a lot I could say, all good, but one thing that
impresses beef. Then
one thing that impresses me about Derrick, it always has, like, when I first started going on the road all the time, and there were many years at the Post-Dispatch, I'd be on the road 130, 140 nights, and after a while it gets old, and it's tough, and travel's not easy, and yet you love covering baseball, and you go out there and just listen. It's your job, and no one's saying, like, go give him a medal. No one's saying that, but it can be a job that's very, very, very debilitating, draining, taxing. But the thing about you, different than me, I would just want to get to the hotel and just crash and just, like, block out the world and read. And then this guy, every city he goes into, it's like there's something he must go explore. He's got to see. He's never been there. I've heard about this place. It's got the greatest bagel in the state of Washington, or some museum that no one's ever heard of. One of the small delights of my life is, like, my wife will say, like, oh, you got to put another postcard from Derrick. He's on the road and he buys these postcards and he handwrites notes to, like, all his friends and acquaintances. Not every single time, but he's got me in his postcard rotation. But it's like your curiosity for the world, and you never get enough of it. And I don't know whether, you're some kind of combination between, like, Huckleberry Finn and something, but it's like you just, I'm like, how does he do this? Joe Strauss and I used to not make fun of you, but we'd be like,
no, Joe was me.
Does he ever get tired? Like, what do you mean he's off to explore some museum? Like, a museum of what? Yeah. Like, I don't even know what the museum is supposed to be about, but there he goes. He's off again to another museum. I so much appreciate your, like, love for life and your curiosity, and you don't let your curiosity dim. It's always thriving at a high level, but you get more out of the road than any sports writer I've ever known, because most sports writers, present company, we just want to go drink some beer and just hang out and, tell jokes and laugh about something.
I do some of that.
Yeah, you do. No, you do.
I do.
But no, you're always off to see the Wizard or something. So it's like, and so anyway, no, you've made the best out of life on the road. So My praise.
Yeah, I mean, you go to these. I try to take advantage of. I love travel. I love it.
I know you do.
I mean, I love going to new places and being thrown into a challenging situation. And I've been very fortunate that baseball has given me the opportunity to go to tremendous places. I mean, before I was covering the Cardinals, my son coming back, he got really into like reading about the bats of the late 1990s in college baseball. All right, so maybe you know where he gets it from, but
yeah,
but so he was like they're putting up like these 6-hour games and the 20-run games and everything like that because the bats they're illegal, right? They're illegal now, but they were illegal back then. And so he's reading about the College World Series and these like 19-16 games and everything like that. And he was like, "Oh man, did you know all this was going on?" And I was like, "I went to some of those games." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, he goes, "Why would you go there?" I was like, "I don't know. It's Omaha. I could drive there. I went to some because why not? Like, I've been to the College World Series before. I would sure."
Yeah, you covered the national champion, right?
I did cover
LSU,
a national champion. That was a few years later, but like I went to some of those games just because.
I hijacked the conversation. I apologize to my two friends here. Let's get back to base. We don't have to, but if you guys have been waiting to ask a baseball question,
I just want to say, like, I feel like we should have a front row seat to it.
Yeah, seriously.
So I've just been sitting here like, keep
just
going.
absorbing.
Awesome.
I mean, and gosh almighty, if we ever just got into story time, because there's a million of those, some of the experiences, just like we're literally within the framework of covering a team.
Yeah.
And just the characters and some of the crazy stuff that's happened, and and I was able to venture in all these other sports. I mean, I got people say you got to tell your Ram stories, you got to tell these stories because I got a million of them. It's like, what an adventure this job has been. Except I was like, no more. I want off the road, and you're just like more.
Yeah,
good for you.
Like,
good for you.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I enjoy it. I mean, we'll see what this.
How much longer do you want to be a beat writer? No, listen, I'm going to embarrass him, but it's true. Derrick Goold will be, however we want to call it, he will be the award winner where, you are displayed in Cooperstown. There is no doubt in my mind that's going to happen. Seriously, I'm not saying it because he's a dear friend and a cherished colleague for so many years. He's one of the great baseball writers of his generation, and he is universally respected. And it's one of the best there's ever been. And he's a guy that represents the new breed, which is a good thing because he sort of also has those old school sensibilities and the appreciation of the past. But he doesn't let the appreciation of the past block his vision of the way the game's played now, the way to analyze the game, the way to evaluate the game, understanding that, things evolve constantly. And you're still a young guy, don't get me wrong, but you have
that's nice of you to say.
No, but I mean, compared to me, but you've never lost a step, or you've never been behind the curve. You have stayed to the forefront, and that's you and I know this. I mean, in terms of generations of hardcore baseball writers, that has always been like when I was younger and watching some of the older guys who I revered. Don't get me wrong. But they just wouldn't give in to the changes, and they just wouldn't understand. No, it was better then, and this we should do this. And man, do you remember when it was like that? And like you've never at any time I've known you lapsed into that, but yet you have a great, wonderful, rich appreciation for baseball history and the characters that occupied baseball and were part of building baseball. You never. There has been a tendency, in my experience, some of the younger writers, and no names because I can't think of any right now, tend to sneer a little bit about, sneer at kind of like this, baseball, the nostalgia and all this stuff. And it's like, it's corny. It's like, oh, give me a break. You have existed your entire career in both worlds.
Nice.
Peacefully and with great, and both worlds have been very rewarding to you. You understand how it's important to live in both worlds and appreciate both things. There's no one is better than the other.
I think part of that is because of St. Louis.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, I'm very fortunate to cover baseball here. It was very important, as you know, from our first conversation. Well, not our first, but our conversation back at Coors Field back in 2001.
What an eventful day that was!
Oh my God!
Albert Pujols' very first game.
Albert Pujols'
Stan-
Major League debut. Stan Musial.
Stan Musial shows up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You talk about a field of dreams type thing.
And Bernie asked me if I want to come back to work for the Post-Dispatch.
Yeah,
And
all
I
in
was
one
like,
day.
If I get to cover baseball, yeah.
Yeah, Stan the Man, even like baseball mythology, he was kind of passing the torch to Albert. Nobody knew it.
Yeah.
Because he just
It's
shows
amazing.
up unannounced at Coors Field in Denver for opening day. And he
It's
goes to
crazy.
the ticket booth or whatever, or he goes to the will call and he says, "Hey, I'm Stan Musial. I'm in town for a card show and I just want to come in and go to the ball game." I thought I was going to be gone by now, but we're staying the next day. And I just want to, can I get into the ball game? And they're like, "Well, yeah, Mr. Musial."
Yeah.
And then they talked him into throwing out the first pitch. And I've always said I got a lot of mileage out of that story because it's like, I could go into the whole baseball mythology thing. It's like he showed up out of nowhere, and it's like symbolically passing the torch to Pujols.
Yeah.
Albert's first game in the big leagues, and Stan the Man's in Denver. He comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He didn't come out of a cornfield, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then and I'm like, well, what? Have you thought about coming back to the Post-Dispatch, Derrick?
Yeah, we had lunch that day.
You have a hockey, it's only the hockey job that's open, but I know your wife's from St. Louis and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
We got that done quick though, didn't we?
It did. It turned around. Yeah, September. I was here.
Wow.
No.
But then you did the Blues for a long time, and then
Not
you
long, just 3.
That's long. It's kind of long.
What is this then?
Well, no.
What is 7 times?
Should we keep talking here? Is it okay?
And Derrick, I mean, we've really appreciated your time, so we don't
That's
want to spend too much time.
No, that's fine.
Who all right, I'm going to ask you two, and again, people that follow St. Louis Cardinals and also follow all the great writing that has been done on the beat. It goes back generations, and I had the privilege of working with Bob Bragan, being mentored by him, Bob Burns, all those guys. But I want to ask you about this, because I think this is a really good question, because it's stuff, as I get older, I think about these things more than I ever have in terms of savoring certain experiences. All right, we'll go with Rick Hummel, our dear late friend, first. All right, what did you learn about covering baseball just by being a colleague of Rick Hummel's for many years and just sitting next to him literally all those years? And what was your takeaway from Rick Hummel that you still hold close to this day that might still provide some guidance if you reflect on being his friend and his teammate?
Yeah, I mean, there's the big professional lesson, and there's the big personal lesson. Let's go with the professional lesson first. Just purely from a ball writing, really inside ball writing. The response people had for his game stories. And in a lot of ways, he was ahead of the curve in what game stories were becoming. And by watching him and talking to him, and Bernie, you were there in the press box, and it continued after, it was just the two of us. We would constantly talk about strategy, but not what had just happened, but what was going to happen. What were they setting up to happen?
He could see in advance in the game the way a Whitey Herzog could.
Right. He learned a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, there is a level of understanding of the game that he has gotten to that allows him to see the potential steps ahead, right? But then, there's a lot of folks like that. I mean, there are managers like that, players like that. There's a lot of folks like that.
Right.
But he's able to convey that into descriptions that readers can grasp and see a facet of the game that they didn't. His game stories, you could read game stories and they're like looking through a kaleidoscope when there's clutter, right? Rick Hummel's was looking through a kaleidoscope as the picture comes together.
Just so many details,
and just a
so
lot
many
of details,
small details that just
foreshadowing.
Yeah,
he had really a good gift for the intricacies of a compelling, strong game story that were the ingredients of the modern game story.
If you missed the game, like you didn't have a chance to watch it on TV, or you didn't have a chance to listen to KMOX, and you just had no idea other than the score, all you had to do is read his game story. And it was a different place and a different time. All you had to do is read his game story. You felt like you were there, that you watched all 9 innings.
Yeah.
And he could do it so quickly, which is amazing. All right.
And then the personal one.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
the
my
personal
bad.
one. I always called him my tether. I was like, you're just my tether. I would spin off the globe without Rick. And maybe some would argue that I do now. But what I learned from him personally was to be in the game that you love and to have it as a career and be around it is so fortunate. And you do have to work to stay there. You have to work to earn it and to stay there, whatever role you have out there at the ballpark. But you're missing out if you don't make deep friendships with the people who are around you or who Rick had cherished friendships with umpires he'd known for years, with scouts he'd known for years, with fellow ball riders that he'd known for years. And there is a tendency in any walk of life, but it's particularly out there when you're in a spot that not everybody wants you to be, to create a silo around yourself and just say, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to, like, you get entrenched, right? I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to put up a wall and I'm going to defend that wall. And Rick showed me the benefit of do not miss the chance to make deep, committed, strong friendships.
It's part of the wonderful experience. Yeah,
it is.
All right, I'm going to ask you another guy that was a big important, another important individual in our professional lives was the late Joe Strauss. Mm-hmm. And Joe, I don't even know how to explain Joe to people that didn't know him, because if I tried to explain it, the reaction partially would be like, geez, well, did you even like him? It's like, no, we loved him, but Joe was a one-of-a-kind guy. Mm-hmm. I know he made me better as a columnist. When he was the beat writer, he made me better. And he didn't hesitate to say what he thought about things. And he would get me thinking. And frankly, I wanted to take my computer and slam him over the head, but I didn't, because I knew Joe, there was a method to his madness. And Joe, just an incredible talent, so gifted, a real character, and he could push your buttons. And at times you just wanted to, but you benefited from it somehow. And I think I understood that better later. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time trying to explain him to people, because when he passed away, like Ken Rosenthal came on the radio show and he said, Bernie, you and I worked with him a long time. He said, sometimes it could be very challenging to be Joe's friend. Yeah. And people would hear that and not know, and they're like, well, that's not a nice thing to say. But it was the Joe Strauss experience.
I think I was his backup longer than anyone.
I think you were, yeah.
At any paper.
But there was no one there was no one I ever wanted to be in a press box for a big game.
Oh my gosh.
Other than you would be part of that. Hummel, Joe Strauss, absolutely part of that.
I mean, we had those were the heydays.
Burwell, game 6 of 2011, all of us there together, and it's just like, gosh, the stress was just building, and got editors in our face. And we would get in these little kind of skirmishes with each other. It didn't matter. It was all about teamwork. Skirmishes, not violence. But it's just in the heat of the heat of the pressure. Yeah. And we all have our ideas.
Well, iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah. And I remember hollering at you one night in the NLCS. It was the time Matt Holliday nearly killed the second baseman, Scudero.
Marco Scudero.
And Derrick is like, well, I'm going to write this, and what are you doing? And I'm like, what? I'm going to go in there and see what everyone. Well, what are you doing? It'll help if you tell me what you're going to do, and then I'm going to. And I'm like, get away from me. It's just like, if people saw that, say, God, these guys hate each other. It was the exact opposite. And so that was always the great thing about being part of a team, because, gosh, we brought out the best in each other. We got through those tough spots together. We've challenged each other. It got to a situation where sometimes for about 10 minutes, we didn't like each other. Yeah. But at the end of the night, we were so proud of the work we did as a team. Yeah. And it was just like, wow, this exactly is why I got into this business, and I wanted to do this for a living, because at the end of the night, it's one of the most satisfying things. If this is your profession, there is no greater satisfaction, even if you bickered a little bit with the people you're working with. It was all for a good end.
Yeah, I mean, we covered amazing things.
Well, what did you learn from Joe?
I learned a lot. I mean, I learned ways to report that I'd never thought. I remember a very formative conversation that I had with him, where he said, this is pretty early on, so maybe 06. So pretty early on. I came to the beat in 05. Oh yeah, that's right. Thank you. Thanks. We were talking on the phone, or no, we were at the ballpark, and he was like, "Look, I understand what you're trying to do. Like, as a beat writer, you want to go out and you want to get the comment that explains what happened." And he was talking about like the questions I was asking Tony La Russa or something like that. And he's like, you need to stop trying to find attribution for everything. How many games have you seen? How many baseball games have you seen? Are you not working with me on the beat? You're the expert. If you saw it happen, it happened. Get the quote as to why, get the quote for color, but you've got to stop seeking out somebody to tell you what happened. Be confident. You're the expert. And I always thought, like, okay, that is a style of confidence, not just for writing, but for reporting that he had. I'm going to ask you this question because I know what happened. You're going to obfuscate and not answer, and I'm going to go, no, this is what happened. And you're going to try to shift my direction over here. And he's going to say, no, I saw what happened. I saw the duck. Stop telling me it's a goose. It was a duck.
No, he was something else.
And I appreciate that. And I think about that a lot. Like, there are times in post-game press conferences where, and you were there when one of them, when Tony La Russa said, "Why do you keep asking me the same question 3 times in 3 different ways?" And I said, "Because I'm waiting for an answer." That's Strauss. I mean, I learned that from Strauss. I saw what I saw. I know what I saw. I've seen it time and time again. I don't need you to tell me what I saw. I need you to tell me why I saw it.
Yeah.
That's a big leap.
He's something else, man. And he could work a clubhouse.
He could work a clubhouse.
about as to use a Tony La Russa expression, tied for first. I'm sure there's somebody been better, but I don't know. You never even really noticed him. He's just slide around.
Oh, I always noticed.
He'd get all kinds of stuff, and he's sort of talking out of the side of his mouth.
Oh, I knew where the ninja was.
Yeah, the ninja, that's right.
I mean, I was a part of. I mean, we had skills. You saw. I mean, we were a good blend. I think.
Yeah, you were.
I think he and our strengths meshed.
Yeah.
Even though our personalities always didn't. But our strength.
He was hard on you, but I have no doubt he made you better.
Made me better. Made me way better.
I felt the same way.
Yeah. Wow. Well.
And then Brian Burwell was also a gift to all of us, and the fact that he passed away of cancer, and then it wasn't much longer after that Joe was diagnosed. It was just a brutal thing, and but Brian Burwell taught me that he had an amazing. He could be tough in terms of writing, like he'd bring it, Burwell reminded me, just like I'm doing tonight, maybe I'm channeling him. So it's okay to just like laugh about stuff. Let people see you laugh and let them know you're enjoying this. And so you would hear his laughter from somewhere in the press box or somewhere in the stadium. And you'd hear him just this big booming laugh. And it would make you smile because look, he gets it. He just absolutely gets it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, Miklasz, calm down. I'm telling myself, But one of my favorite newspaper stories ever was the night that, Pujols hit the home run off Lidge.
Yeah.
And the way deadlines were, Burwell had to have a column in, and I had a column in. We turned our columns in. Cardinals lose, season over. That's just what you have to deal with. And so Pujols comes up, boom. And we both know that our columns were dead. and we would have about 15 minutes to somehow write a new one. And so what did we do? Did we go like, oh my God? No, we looked at each other and started laughing hysterically. And people in the press box, like the Houston writers, are like, what the hell is wrong with these guys?
Yeah.
Because we just understood the absurdity. We just witnessed something incredible. And now there's going to be an editor screaming at us like within a minute, like, you got to write all over it. And we were just laughing at the absurdity of it all, like the thunderous moment and the privilege we had to try to capture it. But we also knew that there were going to be people just like screaming at us to get a story in. And Burwell told the editor on site, I'll never forget it, because they were freaking out in St. Louis. Oh my gosh, we got to get this thing to, And Burwell put his arm around the editor on site and he said, listen, first of all, Bernie and I need you to calm down. Okay. We got this. We got this. You tell the desk that we will have a fresh column in 20 minutes, but they got to give us 20 minutes. They can't say you got to get it in now because we can't do that. That's literally impossible. Get us 20 minutes. We're going to make you proud. Everything's going to be okay. And the editor walked away like, thanks, And that's exactly what happened. And I thought, I just wish I had Burwell's grace, because my inclination would have been to start like hollering at the editor. But Burwell's like, no, let's talk. It's going to be okay. Let's talk. Now he was also one of a kind in his own way. So anyway, story time.
No, I mean it was.
Have we destroyed the whole show now?
No,
as far
this
as
has been incredible. I mean, just looking at the chat right now, all these people saying like, "Thank you for this conversation."
We're getting more donations now.
Yeah,
oh, good.
Say we'll tell more stories, but y'all need to send more money in.
I'm pretty sure we've doubled the amount of money donated since this conversation.
Yeah,
so that's awesome.
That's great.
Trevor Rosenthal's watching right now. Wants you guys to know he's keeping an eye on you because you guys are competition now. So just,
you're going to talk to Trevor about that. That's pretty exciting.
Bit,
what he's
Trevor's coming to the baseball writers dinner.
Trevor's was great.
It's very exciting. January 19th. I got to plug it, but at the annual baseball writers dinner, and Trevor's coming to present the award to Ryan Helsley.
Oh, that's Trevor Rosenthal was, and I'm not just saying this because he's coming on late. I mean,
he's listening. He's listening now.
In fact, all you got to do, I did a series just off season about.
He's also stolen my line. I told him more competition now back at the winter meeting. It's already beginning.
The all DeWitt era Cardinals team, and I went position by position, and I put a lot into it.
Yeah.
Listen, we all watched Trevor Rosenthal, but when I reviewed the magnitude of just how great this guy was, it's like, you got to be kidding me. It's like I knew it, but I didn't grasp it all.
He did things other closers for the Cardinals did not.
Well,
and they have two closers in the Hall of Fame.
I made a controversial pick. I wasn't trying to be controversial, but a lot of people were like, really? And I said, yeah. I named him the number one closer of the DeWitt era.
Oh, yeah.
And I apologized in the copy to Jason Isringhausen because it had nothing to do with Izzy. And Izzy is a Cardinals Hall of Fame. But Trevor Rosenthal's numbers were just ridiculous.
No,
they were so great.
He was a herald of the next game.
Oh, my goodness.
He was a harbinger of what was coming for the ninth inning the future.
He was so special.
What he was doing led to a lot of what you see. He just was ahead of it.
He was really, really special. And he had a huge impact on St. Louis Cardinals baseball too. I mean, he really did. That group of young relievers that came up in 2013, just legendary stuff. Carlos Martinez, Seth Maness, Segrist, Shelby Miller, Rosenthal. They're just coming out, just blowing people away. So, but he is in our business now, huh? Welcome.
It is.
No, what a great dude too, and I regret that I never really got a chance to know him very well. Which is my fault.
Yeah.
What a great dude though.
Derrick,
what a great.
I want to sneak in one question to bring it all kind of full circle at the end. We talked a lot about maybe some of the missteps and mishaps of the Cardinals front office, and just some things in the late 2010s that you're feeling the ramifications of now. Most fans probably aren't going to know the name Chaim Bloom right now. Most of them definitely know, or a lot of them don't know Rob Serfolio. They don't know these behind the scene things that are happening right now. What are the things you're seeing from the Cardinals front office this offseason as they transition into a new era in 2025 and beyond that can excite fans about the potential of the Cardinals getting back to those things?
Well, if anything we've learned, infrastructure is not exciting. People don't get really moved to vote or to be excited about new bridges. However, they are essential. And so you've kind of rigged the question there a little bit by asking me about excitement, and I want to offer it up that infrastructure is not exciting.
Yeah.
But what they are doing is they are expanding the staff in a way that is both retro, in the sense that like it's going to repopulate some of the positions that were really important, some of the positions that were lost or experience that was lost either by downsizing or by promotions. Pop Warner, Stubby Clapp, guys moving up through the system, Ali Marmol, Mike Schilt. One of the things about promoting from within is you do need to backfill. And if you promote a whole generation and you promote the last remaining connections to George Kissel, and one of the few who didn't leave for the majors, Mark DeJean, retires, you're not going to have that thread. Jose Akendo did his part and kept it going, but there was a lot of like movement up, and then there was a lot of not replacement below. So that led to some things. So they are expanding that. I think the biggest thing, excitement. I think this is something to say. Bernie, I'm not sure you were there. I'm going to bring up, and if you'll permit me, but
Sure.
We were at a press conference. I believe it was Mo's extension, not his current one, but the previous one, because it was at Busch Stadium. And I asked DeWitt if there was concern that his commitment to continuity, because he talked about that, continuity. I said, is there ever a concern that your commitment to continuity becomes stale? That it just invites staleness?
What a great question.
Because you are just having the same voices who hear the same thing, and there's no one from the outside to challenge the way you're doing. Does it become a euphemism for stale that you don't recognize until it's too late, right? Okay. I think there has definitely been that feel of stale, right? Either in commentary, messaging, or just straight up how they do things. That's gone. If you want to get excited about something, they are pulling from the Dodgers, Cleveland. They aren't pulling guys who played here. I mean, they brought John Jay back, but Rob Strafolo, he played for a Cardinal at Yale. He's from Yale. There's a Yale vibe to it, but he's from the outside.
Pierpont's from Seattle.
Right. And Larry Day, they have experience elsewhere. They brought a performance guy in from the Dodgers, instead
five World Series rings.
Yeah, instead of the Cardinals going, we are going to keep what we have going. They are saying we're going to pull from other places who have had success to merge with us. And I don't think there's a sense that Chaim Bloom is going to take the Cardinal way like an Etch-a-Sketch and shake it all up and do the blueprint all anew. That's not his idea. His idea is like, I've got a pretty good, old car here. I think I've made the description that he's got a muscle car that kind of isn't fuel efficient. It kind of needs new tires and everything. And he's going to take that chassis and he's going to make it an electric vehicle. Like, that's his challenge. His challenge is to take a Shelby that is just down on its luck and needs a new tire and has a few dents and turn it into a electric vehicle so that he can merge the new from outside, finally, like fresh perspectives, challenging perspectives. Hey, they're doing this. Well, we've done that for a long time really well. They're doing it better. All right, well, let's merge that with what the Cardinal fiber is and what they do well, add on to it, and create, instead of a perpetuation of the Cardinal way and Cardinal traditions, an augmentation of it. Don't make it like, make it a cyborg, not just an offspring, right? Like, take the Cardinal way and make it a cyborg. Don't just go, okay, we're just going to keep rolling out the same line of carbon copies.
Yeah. I can't thank you enough for your time tonight.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you
No,
so
this
much
was
for
fun.
joining
Yeah,
us.
this is awesome.
This was
Great.
fun.
Time flew.
That's cool. How does one get a pack? You guys have the packs there.
I think Andrew can hook you up. So definitely do that. Oh man.
I brought a stack. So
Oh, yeah.
good Christmas gifts.
So I got
This is
my
great.
gift. Look at this.
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously, we really
Fantastic.
appreciate you, Derek, and obviously our viewers already probably keep up with your work at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. But thank you for all
Yeah,
the
and
coverage you
look
provided.
to St. Louis. Thank you very much, and
Of
look
course.
to St. Louis BBWAA for that
Yes.
dinner, January 19th.
Right. Yeah. Jeff Jones plugged it earlier. We'll
Yeah.
do it. And I told Joe that I would plug the Baseball Writers Dinner on my various platforms, and
Yeah,
I keep forgetting to do it. Okay, got to go. So, thank you.
Andrew's giving us Kareem's been waiting in the chat.
I
for
didn't know that. I'm
30
sorry,
minutes,
Andrew.
so it's
I'm
all
sorry,
good.
Kareem. I'm
No,
really sorry.
Kareem's
So
awesome. Yeah,
okay.
thanks,
All right,
Andrew.
thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much,
thank
Derek.
you, man. Good to see you. Happy holidays, everybody.
If you're not working too hard during the holidays, maybe we can go get some coffee or
I
something.
would like that. I
Yeah,
would like that.
we should.
I'm in your neighborhood because
Yeah.
airport works nearby. So.